Get up, everybody, get off your ass. We got to do something, and we got to do it fast. Cause the people are hungry, starving, and the fuel is low. Don't wait for Jesus, he ain't coming back no more. Got to sacrifice, have no fear, shed no blood, no, shed no tears. We gonna make our move, get out of our way. Cause we've been waiting way too long. We don't wait, we don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, and all you citizens of the world, once again, it's time to take the chain from the brain to get back in the people's game. We're going to move it from the lower level to the higher, from the shallower to the deeper, and from the one-sided to the many, and from the abstract to the concrete. We're here for Heartland at Home number 30 for the week of December 12th. And we're going to start off very shortly. Katie Hogan is here, Tom Clark is here, and this is the start of the Festival of Light, Hanukkah, and we're going to welcome a guest today, two guests, in fact, Glenn Reedus, a veteran journalist, and Thornetta Davis, a blues singer from Detroit. As usual, we like to start off with something good happening in each of our lives. So I'm turning it over to Katie, and good morning to you, Katie Hogan.
Michael, you did that rap that you used to do 50 years ago when you were selling Rising Up Angry newspapers.
I love you. I remembered it.
Yes, it's in there. It's in there.
Actually, it's Mao Zedong.
But you still used it when you were giving out Rising Up Angry.
I used it on the Heartland when we did the show from the cafe in the back in the day.
Yeah.
I was ready to pull out my buck for Curly to get a Panther paper.
So the good things from me this week is I'm looking at a tree in my house. And next week it'll have ornaments. Maybe I'll turn the video on it. But it's fun and it smells good.
We shared a socially distanced bowl of chili with neighbors in Lakeview, technically in violation of the state mandate not to go outside your bubble, but we were outdoors with our own utensils, our own cleaning equipment, and pretty much having a good time socializing, which most of us can't do except via this crazy kind of Zoom thing. So, Michael?
Well, we too had a fire out in the back a number of times. And one of those days was celebrating the 80th birthday of my good friend and my first wife, Diane Libman, AKA Stormy Brown. Happy birthday to you, Stormy. A whole lot of people love you. And this show will be actually broadcast on WLUW 88.7 anytime on youtube.com/Heartland Media. But on the 12th will be my dad's 100th and something birthday. I miss him. He was a hell of a guy. Came out of Missouri, ended up producing plays on Broadway, taught me a lot, created some resentment, some love. You know, dads are wonderful, and I still talk to him on a regular basis up there in the sky. How about a little head exploding news now that we've all talked about the good things in our lives? Let's start off with Tom Clark.
I was thanking my lucky stars this week that we got Trump instead of Cruz, because Cruz unfortunately has some brains, and he's the only one so far of the future presidential candidates, because he's already running for 2024, that is supporting this crazy suit out of Texas that now how many other Republican attorney generals around the country are supporting this absolutely baseless allegation that ballots should be tossed out because rules got changed. You know, rules that in a democracy we sometimes change to make things more efficient, particularly in the pandemic, so people can still vote. Well, not in Ted Cruz's democracy. It's just, it's amazing. It's amazing. They've yet to prove a single case in court.
Well, speaking of court, I loved Justice Alito's thing this week that was brought to us, reminded.
Hard to love Justice Alito, but
no, I'm loving the news about it and the fact that Stephen Colbert keeps us abreast of these things. But he had a one-sentence denial of Trump's latest legal effort to overturn the Pennsylvania ballot, which meant, and this is, you know, he basically said, I want him to read this, so let's keep it short. One sentence, no good, bye-bye.
We deny the petition.
Yeah.
You know, in the good news, bad news category, we're falling behind in the climate change challenge. Here it is in the middle of December, and we're going to have a 50-degree day. It's wonderful to be out walking with only one layer on instead of three, but I'll tell you, this is scary. I remember distinctly mid-December, my dad is freezing the backyard for our ice skating rink. Can't do that anymore in Chicago winters. It's really kind of nutty. But, because of the pandemic, as we mentioned last week, we're actually reducing our carbon footprint. And I'd like to see, as we return to normal, if there's a way to not return to that normal. I mean, imagine kicking off 9% of carbon emissions and not going back to that. It's really amazing. But of course, we in the rich world are going to have to do some more cutting back or realignment of how we use energy and stuff, because we're still the main polluters.
Yeah, I think there's nothing more important than reminding people every day right now that returning to normal is not what we want, climate change wise, particularly. What's happening with this quote unquote bailout or stimulus, or what should we be calling it?
There will probably be something before the end of the year, but what we're hearing right now in the middle of December is not enough for workers. It's really not enough to help businesses. And it's really unclear if states and local government are going to get any help. The GOP has really fallen down the job when it comes to serving the people of this country. It's really pretty disgusting.
Yeah, and let's remind people that none of the first stimulus, quote unquote stimulus package, went specifically to folks in congregate housing or their caregivers. And no one's talking about it again, even though they make up 50% countrywide, more or less, of the deaths.
Yep.
Yeah, so let's see. We got some transition news, I think.
Well, I just thought it was interesting as Biden continues to announce sort of moderate, mainstream, veteran, experienced adults to join his cabinet. That's news. But what's also news?
I think Tom is going to keep saying that for the next 4 years.
Maybe.
Experienced adults.
But we also want those experienced adults to do the job the right way. And Tammy Duckworth, God bless her, military veteran, has raised some concerns about Biden's pick for defense secretary. A honorific veteran, an African-American general who retired last year, the year before. But we have this thing in this country about civilian control of the military. And Tammy is not comfortable creating a waiver as they did for Trump's Secretary of Defense, Mathis, another former general. And she's raising questions about whether this is really a good policy for Joe Biden to continue of hiring ex-generals to run our Defense Department when it should be civilians who are in control. I wonder if Biden isn't in fact showing how close he is to the military industrial complex. One more thing we're going to have to organize on the next 4 years.
Well, just briefly, COVID deaths this week on a daily number topped 3,000. And, there's been a lot of likening it to some other terrible days in our histories past, like Pearl Harbor and 9/11. We're in new territory, folks. The flip side of that is the really good news is that the first vaccines are happening right now, mostly across the pond, but I suspect by the time some of you see this, some of our first responders will have gotten a look at their date for their first shot. So
please remember, wash your hands, wear your mask, keep socially distanced. We can do this for another few months and tackle this thing while we wait in line for our shots.
And on the sports front, the COVID tests are rampant. The positive COVID tests are rampant, both in college sports and in pro football. So that's something to be aware of. The games are still coming off and on. They change the dates. But on another front, the Olympic Games, an attempt to make things more modern, beginning at the Paris Games in 2024, breakdancing, AKA breaking, will become an official Olympic sport. Take that in. In a lot of ways, it'll be very interesting, and it opens up the Olympics to a whole bunch of new folks. but also squash, which is played by 20 million people in 185 countries, was once again turned down as an official Olympic sport.
You know, somebody else that may be coming up short are alley entrepreneurs, particularly those on the north side that pick up all our garbage, particularly metal, you know, old refrigerators, things like that. They used to bring them to General Iron scrap metal in Lincoln Park. But of course, that area got a big TIF subsidy from all of us taxpayers. And this coming week, the city's going to vote on whether to let all that scrap end up on the southeast side. Why is it the southeast side gets all the rest of the city's waste? Why isn't it that every neighborhood shouldn't be taking care of its own waste? And what about those alley entrepreneurs who I bet don't end up coming back to the north side after they've dropped their last load way out towards Indiana? I mean, I just don't think the city has really tackled its waste management issues as represented by this general scrap iron thing. It's really an interesting thing to look at, on top of other, you know, challenges we face in this noisy city, right, Katie?
Well, you're referring to the helicopters above our neighborhood a few nights ago that went on for well over an hour. Numerous helicopters over a site of a shooting, which was the result of a domestic. And we have heard very little about it. Our shooting was immediately overtaken by other shootings in other parts of the city and suburbs, which was very interesting to me. But the fact of the matter was, in a very much stressed out population, to have helicopters hovering over your neighborhood and running for more than an hour, plus the sirens, PTSD, anyone? So let's skip to our weed report, because we've got a guest coming on, and I know that Michael has at least one thing he wants to say about the weed.
Well, just that the U.S. House of Representatives did approve a bill to decriminalize and tax marijuana on the federal level. However, the measure is unlikely to advance in the Senate.
Yeah, right.
And Katie, you were going to do it, but I'm going to do it. The UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs voted this week to remove cannabis from controlled lists. Helps worldwide medical cannabis market, but not necessarily legalization.
So we thought before we bring in our guests, we'd have a little musical interlude. And this is something that's looking back on the pandemic and our quarantine time. Enjoy.
Exercise by jogging round my room. Online meetings taking place on Zoom. This is safer. Out of toilet paper. Now left here for the longest time. Longest for the longest time. Try to teach their kids online. Somehow this needs twice as much prep time. Self-isolation is how we help our nation. Left here for the longest time.
And that was a wonderful way to think about what we've all been through together the last few months, I hope. This morning, we're going to have this conversation with a veteran journalist, editor, Glenn Reedus. Glenn is someone who's been on the show before. He brings a unique perspective to life in the city, in the region, and we hope to get into a little politics and city development and other issues as we go ahead here, and a little bit of news about the media. Glenn Reedus, thank you for joining us this morning on Heartland at Home. So what about this election we've been going through for, it seems like, weeks instead of waiting for the final result to come through? And in particular, we're interested in your reflecting a bit on the role of Black voters in this last election cycle. Glenn?
When we talk about the Black voters, it was really a dichotomy, because you take places like Illinois and Michigan, where they came out full force, no problems. But then you look at a really important place like Georgia, and right outside of Atlanta, where everything was done to suppress that vote, but folks were willing to stay in line for hours without chairs, stay in line for hours to wait to vote. And I think that had a whole lot to do with the fact that Stacey Abrams had a voter anti-suppression movement that had taken root maybe a year and a half ago, and she's so respected. People said, well, if she's for it, we're for it more, and that really helped.
She was credited a lot in the post-election breakdown. She got mentioned quite a bit.
And I think she deserved it, because we see so many times in politics that a candidate loses and disappears, and she didn't try to move up to another office or anything. She identified a problem and set out to fix it, and hopefully she'll grow that organization and its impact.
Glenn, what are you hearing from Georgia right now? We have 2 Senate races in early January, and there are, of course, lots of people want to help Georgia. Although maybe it's best if we stay away. I don't know. What do you hear, and what do you think is a good way for folks to plug into what Stacey Abrams has pulled off so far?
Well, I think that right now it's beyond the point of Stacey and voter suppression. I probably get a minimum of 8 emails a day from the 2 Democratic candidates who are running. And, guys, come on. I gave one of you money one time, and that's enough. I think that if people want to help, that's the key, is to make donations to help with the messaging, and which is, getting more expensive by the day, because the Republicans have a pretty ample TV campaign going, and neither of the Dems have been able to match that to date.
Really?
Yeah, and they keep asking for more money, and they need it.
And let me just ask you about Georgia. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, had was in Georgia from way back, from the early 60s. And I know that there are a lot of SNCC veterans there, and I followed some comments. Any thoughts on the role of SNCC and those early civil rights workers working with Stacey Abrams and the result of the Georgia vote?
I think that was critical to her success, because if people who were around in the John Lewis and Stokely Carmichael days of SNCC, if they're still involved, I mean, they are very ardent about politics, democratic politics, and winning. And I think it was maybe 3 years ago, I interviewed C.T. Vivian, and I asked him, I said, how can you still go after all you've done, and you still want to get out there? And he said, Brother Reedus, I don't know what else to do. And I think that's what those people in Georgia are pretty much saying. Yeah, I've done it a long time. Yeah, I'm tired, but I don't know how to stop. And that's a great thing to me.
Glenn, let me point you in the direction of the national process right now with the transition underway. If the Biden-Harris team called you tomorrow and said, what are the top things, the front burner things that we should be dealing with in this country, in your estimation, what 2 or 3 things would you say are those top things?
I think that the first one would be to not only reinstate, but expand the stimulus package, because there's going to be, we got this these rent these evictions coming up. People are losing their unemployment at the end of this month. And to me, there's an obligation to the country, regardless of who is president, to not put people in harm's way, because some will not be able to recover. I mean, as sad as it is, some people, they lose their unemployment, they don't get any kind of stimulus from the feds, they're going to be homeless or very, very close to it. And that's just not right. The second thing I see is some sort of urban infrastructure plan to get people real jobs. I mean, not $8, $10, $12 an hour, but jobs where they're trained to build and or repair bridges, jobs where they make a real difference in the community. Because I think the like 3/4 of the bridges in Illinois are unstable in some way or another, and I don't think it's wise to wait till a whole caravan of cars and trucks fall into a river,
Right.
because the bridge was no good, and they say, "Oh, we got to repair it." Do it now. People need the work. People want the work, and they definitely need the money. Those would be the top two things I'd say.
Well, bringing it back home a little bit, how is Mayor Lightfoot doing on budget, police, education, selling the city? The infrastructure questions that you just referred to. I think the work on the Lakeshore Drive Bridge is actually beginning as we speak. And that was one that was shored up with toothpicks a couple of years ago. So how about locally?
We're in a lot of trouble. I mean, a long time ago, in another place, when I worked for a politician, it just struck me that some people have a plan to get elected, but no plan to govern. And I think that is what happened in Chicago. The other thing is, I don't think that, excuse me, Mayor Lightfoot recognizes that a lot of people were not voting for her, they were voting against Tony Preckwinkle. So they're not necessarily Daley.
Or Bill Daley.
Bill Daley, my favorite non-winner. Yeah. Oh, my favorite rich non-winner who deserted Chicago. Okay, now we get that out of the way. But I don't think that the mayor understands government. She probably had some good campaign people, but there's a huge transition between being the candidate and then being the governor. She's made, I think the biggest mistake she made was coming out of the box and going after Ed Burke. Regardless of what you think of Alderman Burke, nobody around has won more elections than him. And there are, and I'm sure all of you have seen this at some point in your life, publicly or in front of a crowd, people will back somebody, but then behind closed doors, they'll say, "Oh, it doesn't make any difference what she said. I'm still with you." So I think that Burke is very strategic, so he doesn't have to be out in the open about what he wants to happen. He talks to that core group of aldermen who are always going to be with him. And the budget that got passed, that's problematic simply because it's founded on hope that President-elect Biden will send a bunch of money to Chicago. And the budget is the most critical element of government. Both sides of, the legislative and executive side. And I think because of the attitude that the mayor's taken, the council has said, "Okay, yeah, go ahead, do what you want to do," knowing, recognizing limitations that she doesn't. And there's one of the most useless things, in my opinion, is to talk about a casino. Casinos don't do anything for cities. casinos help the people who build them and operate. Detroit had 3 casinos.
Right.
Detroit went bankrupt, and we've got Gary. It's already broken ground for a casino on I-80 and 94. So it will be up and running and having people accustomed to coming there before the first shovel gets in the ground for a Chicago casino. And there's no consensus on where it ought to be. I mean, a casino, I think it's what you call conventional wisdom, and that's hurting. That's hurting the city because there's plenty of room on the west side to put it. But people say, no, it can't be by, it has to be by hotels and restaurants. Well, look at the big picture. Instead of just a casino, pitch some hotels, some restaurants to build in conjunction with the casino. I mean, the west side was where I grew up, and I can drive down Roosevelt Road and see the vacant lots where buildings used to be before the riots. They're vacant. They've been vacant since I was in high school, and as Tom knows, I'm old. And really, you can't keep ignoring the west side or do piecemeal development and say you're helping the economic viability overall. That's just not the case.
Where were you after Dr. King was assassinated in 1968? And did this summer's uprising after the George Floyd murder bring back any flashbacks for you?
I was a junior. Yeah, I was a junior in high school on the west side. And no, the George Floyd murder did not, because when Dr. King died, I had never seen my parents like that, first and foremost. I'd never seen my father with that look in his eye, like, we don't have any hope. George Floyd was, he's like Glenn Reedus, he's just a guy. So, if cop did that to me, then some people would protest for a little while and it would be done. I think there was a lot of pent-up frustration that caused the rioting and the looting, and because it was pretty much nationwide, I think that's emblematic of the mindset of so many people, particularly young people who don't have opportunities for employment, for affordable college and that sort of thing.
Glenn, let's switch to talking a little bit about the media. There's been a real growth in nonprofit news outlets as mainstream media has struggled with, trying to figure out how to make money with the internet because companies don't buy ads anymore in newsprint. You've been through a lot of these battles with community weeklies, with the Chicago Defender. We have the Reader going going nonprofit now. How do you see the future of journalism with this sort of diversification into niche publishing, so much of which is kind of reverting to a nonprofit model to survive?
Well, it's tough, Tom, because I'm a purist, a journalism purist, and if you start a blog and you say that's news in some form, I won't agree with you, because you've got to get that what you're writing about, you got to get it from someplace. So most likely you're going to get it from a newspaper or television. So you're in the stenography business, not in the news business. There's so with all of these alternatives, there's such a small amount of original reporting. And to me, that's what journalism is. And it's not sitting at a desk and making some phone calls or going on Facebook and saying, hey, I'm working on this story. Can anybody tell me about this or about that. And the media's in rough shape now because um, and this is no slam on them because I was in their shoes one time, but you got too many young people. Uh, and that didn't come out right. But you have an abundance. You have an abundance of young people that don't balance with the old reporters. I remember when I was in college and I worked at the Omaha World Herald, and there was a guy named Bill Bellotti, and Bellotti had covered the Starkweather murders in Nebraska, and in fact, he was one of the few people who ever got to go into the what do you call electric chair room, and he got to go in and he asked, and he was the last person to speak to Starkweather. So Bellotti was a star. If he was around today, he'd have every award in the world. But he just wanted to smoke his cigarettes and be left alone and do what he wanted to do. But if there was a story, sometimes reporters would just go to Bellotti and say, "Hey, do you know somebody who might know about this?" And he said, "Yeah, call so." And he was always on. But as you know, so I'm like what 21 back then. So of course, even if he was 45, he looked like he was 80 to me. And but he would want to go out and do everyday stories. But now people want to start stars.
So let me ask you, Glenn, what other outlets do you rely on to get the news you need, or simply just to see ideas that feed your imagination and give you the added information you need, or simply good storytelling?
The Washington Post every day, the New York Times every day, the Pontiac paper, the Oakland Press, because I used to work there, and the St. Louis American, which is considered the best Black newspaper in the country, and the Chicago Crusader, because I used to work there too. That's my daily. But then I mean that's what are the regulars. But I'll visit the Root and Griot, and those Truth Out is one that I really enjoy until they start asking me for money. And there's one other one that escapes me.
How about the
now.
Guardian?
Every once in a while, I just forget it. I mean, it's just not on one of those tabs at the top, and I forget to go there. But when I do, it's hard to pull away because there's so much there.
Yeah.
I think that's the key, that other people aren't covering. If you take COVID today, everybody's covering COVID. Why? And you're not. If you're at the Sun Times or if you're at the LA Times, the only difference is how many died in California, how many died in Illinois. I mean, they treat this pandemic like the box scores at the Cubs game. It's just keeping score. It's not really informing people, or and journalism has gotten away, at least in my opinion, from engaging the everyday man, everyday person. Talking to authorities is great because they're authorities, but does that tell us how the person living on North Lakeshore Drive and South Lakeshore Drive, or in those communities, are affected by it? I mean, from March until October, I refused to go in the grocery store. I was just flat out scared. But how many other people, so you feel like you're by yourself, particularly in these times. What you do, you don't think anybody else is doing, but if you mention it, there may be thousands of people doing that same thing.
Glenn Reedus, it's great to hang around with you and hear your thoughts on things. And I wondered, as we go out, if you could maybe share with us some books, some movies, things that you've been doing to keep yourself together during the pandemic.
I'm not sharing my fountain pen collection or my fountain pen inks. Okay, now we got that out of the way. As terms of books, now this one has shocked all of my friends who I mentioned it to. Rahm Emanuel wrote a book called Nation City after he got out of office. It is brilliant. It is it's Nation City. It is a brilliant book, and because it shows the thinking Rahm and takes out the personality. That's why it's so good. There's another book that I think everybody in the entire world should read, and that is called Thought Without Mind. And it talks about how Google, Amazon, Facebook, and what's Google's parent company, Alphabet, how they've put us in boxes and we don't know it. But they have it's just so fascinating. If I could take a second and go back to something Tom said, those companies control messaging so well that newspapers will never be able to compete, and they should think about this more. Okay, Mike, you like Adidas shoes. You like Adidas sneakers. Well, with the internet, I can send Adidas can send you messages about sales or new products as often as they want. You can't do that with a newspaper. I mean, it's just for you. It's saying,
No, every day I search for Patagonia baggies and I get the messages from Dick's Sporting Good, everyone else every day.
Yeah. And so and that's that's unfortunate for newspapers. Besides World Without Thought, there's another book that people our age should read. It's called The Sword and the Shield. It's about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King during their time, and it shows that so many of the reports that put them at odds have been wrong. I mean, they didn't agree about everything, but can I quote President Obama? We have more in common than we have apart, and that's almost what it is with those two. My wife has fussed a bit about the number of books that are piling up around here, but I'll get to them all eventually.
Glenn Reedus, veteran journalist, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Heartland at Home. We really appreciate your insights, and we absolutely have to have you back to talk more about the news business and what's happening with the media, and maybe do another report card on the mayor as we go forward. So thank you so much.
Hey, you're
Stay
welcome.
well.
I really appreciate you guys having me.
America. We are all Americans. We rise or we fall together.
This is a critical moment in the history of our country. So many people are depending on us.
Let me live.
They want us to forget they're still trying to take away our health care in the middle of a pandemic.
Let me breathe.
I'm running so that ordinary people can have a path of prosperity.
Let me be who I want to be, where I want to be it. Let me be free.
Give me your time.
I am tired.
Give me your poor.
But I am strong.
Give me your hand.
I'll be here.
I will guide
'Cause I know I belong.
You have two extraordinary candidates in John and the Reverend
I will rejoice.
who deserve your vote.
America.
And let's face it, you've also got two senators who badly need to be replaced.
American voice.
Oh, yes. Give me my freedom. Give me my freedom. Give me my freedom, and I will will rejoice.
This has to be a movement-style, bottom-up, grassroots turnout effort unlike anything we've ever seen in our history.
May we rise to the challenge of this renewed reckoning around race and push back hard against the forces of bigotry.
All I ask of you, all I ask of you, all I ask of you.
Wow. So that little video that some of you just saw is some of the political advertising in Georgia right now. It's America Needs Georgia, something that we were just talking to our prior guest, Glenn Reedus, about. But now we're welcoming our current guest out of Detroit, Miss Thornetta Davis.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Welcome, welcome.
I'm so glad to be here.
Tom?
So I Am America is the song that you did with Jeff Daniels that's in the middle of that political ad. How did it come about? You know, what other collaborations have you done with Jeff? And did you think you'd be doing a song that would end up in a political campaign?
Well, actually, no, I didn't. I knew it was going to be on his album. I got asked to actually collaborate with him as far as singing. I thought I was just singing on the record. And I was like, I always wanted to work with Jeff. I knew he was a Michigander, and I kept seeing him pop up in movies and everything. I was like, one of these days I'm gonna work with him. I'm gonna meet him, and didn't know that I'd be getting a call. And when I got the call and I was asked to sing with him, they sent me the song, and it had just the chorus, the hook. And I was like, okay, does this mean he wants me to write something too? And so I got the email, just make it yours, you know, that kind of thing. He sent me an email telling me to make it my song. And I said, all right. So I sat up one night, and it didn't hit me till like 3 o'clock in the morning. I stayed up until like 5, and I finished what my idea of what I wanted to be. And the next day I get a email saying Jeff is going to do a Zoom meeting with you. And I was like, well, I'm glad I finished that song last night, because I had no idea it was all going to go so fast. And so when he did the Zoom, I played him what I had. And he goes, oh, okay. I didn't know it was going to be finished this quick. Because I guess he thought he was going to give me an idea of what he wanted me to do. And so when he got that, he said, okay, well, let's just do a studio recording Friday, 2 days later. We recorded the song, and I'm sitting there waiting for a couple of days later, and all of a sudden, my Twitter goes off. People are liking me and joining my Twitter page, and I'm like, what's that? My phone is bloop, 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 bloop. I'm like, what's happening? 9 o'clock at night. And then I go on Twitter, and the video is up. And I go, whoa, this song is already on a video ad or something. And so then I get a call like several minutes later. Oh, we forgot to call you and tell you.
Thornetta Davis, during the civil rights movement, the great pop staples of the staple singers said you can't have a movement without the music.
Right.
Your music speaks volumes. How would you define your music, your message, and its social impact?
Oh, wow. You know, I have been wanting to get involved in writing something that speaks to people, and Jeff made that possible for me. Because at the time, I was just in my agony of what's going on, you know, thinking this is some messed up stuff happening with the presidents and the Black Lives Matter and all of this stuff that's going on. But right now, we're in the middle of COVID-19. So I really I didn't feel creative. I felt... I don't know, I felt kind of blocked because of what was happening, because I'm waking up every day to bad news. And so when Jeff allowed me to think about it one way, what do I want? What do I want to happen in this country? And I just started, he came up with the I Am America, you know, and the first other couple of lines in there, I should have wrote my lyrics down, but I just said, I let me breathe, let me live. And that's what I want. And I'm hoping these are what the things that are being said throughout this whole movement. the injustice has been going on for years, and people buried it under the rug because we're America. You know, Americans don't have this happening, not out in the open. You know, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to see it, but it's here. It's underlined. That's what made this particular presidency and the way it's been going on continue to fester and have all these other negative things uprise because it's been there all the time. But now you have a president who's allowing it to happen and not saying anything about it.
Well, we got to get back to politics. I just want to ask you because you have opened for some of our favorite artists, from Etta James and Gladys Knight to Bonnie Raitt. So one, you have a long, beautiful career happening. When did you start off? And you know, something that brought you to 2015 when you were crowned Detroit's Queen of the Blues.
Yeah.
My gosh.
When I started singing with a band called the Chisel Brothers in '87, and at the time I was singing top 40 R&B with a girl group called Chanteuse. But when I joined them, I was going to a jam session. I check them out, and then they asked me to get up, and they asked me, did I know any blues? And at the time, I only knew one blues song, which was Stormy Monday. And so
which was what?
Stormy Monday. Ah. And I get up and I jam on that one song because they don't do top 40. That's what I was told. And we know soul music and blues. And I said, this was a bunch of white boys too. And so they said, well, do you know any blues? I said, well, one song. I did that song. Every time I went back, let the girls sing. Then he asked me, would I want to join the band? So cut to 10 years down the road, I'm with the Chisel Brothers. I'm getting all this recognition for being a blues singer now. And I'm winning all these awards. And then I started doing my own thing. I recorded a solo album, Sunday Morning Music, which was alternative rock, which was totally different from R&B and the blues. I'm doing alternative rock now. And then after that album was released, Sunday Morning Music, I come back home and I start singing my favorite songs. I'm involved with all kinds of music, blues, jazz, rock, funk, because I'm from Detroit. And then all of a sudden I started going into writing more, and I wrote from a blues perspective, singing my blues songs. And then I started, after 30 years, the Blues Society, they said Alberta Adams was the original Queen of the Blues. She's my mentor, and she passed away. And then I got asked by Detroit Blues Society, we want to crown you as our next queen. And they gave me a coronation. I had about 20 women at the coronation, and I had crowns, and I got to perform my show, and I've been Detroit's Queen of the Blues, and it means so much to me.
I like that.
Represent my city.
So you never believed in your wildest dreams that this song with Jeff Daniels would take off the way it did. So lots of people are listening to it, but will it get them to vote?
I hope so. I hope it changes minds. I hope it changes hearts. I see so many people sending messages and telling me this made me cry, this moved my spirit. So I'm hoping that it's changing people's minds. That's what I want. Getting the young folks out to vote.
Excellent.
We're going to go out today with your bluesy I Believe.
Yes,
and
everything.
That still resonates today. And Thornetta Davis, we want to thank you for coming on the Heartland at Home show, also sometimes known as Live from the Heartland. And we're looking forward to checking out your music, and hopefully we'll meet you in person someday.
Yes. Thank you, guys. You are great.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Hello everyone, this is Luis Mejia, intern and editor with the Heartland at Home team. We've got some quick announcements to close out the show this week. The holiday shopping season is upon us, and we'd like to suggest to you all to shop locally. In fact, the Rogers Park Business Alliance wants to encourage everyone to shop local, offering a rebate of up to $75 if you buy from Rogers Park independently owned stores. You can actually find more details on the Rogers Park Business Alliance website at www.rpba.org. We want to thank the entire Heartland at Home team for producing the show every week. Editor Susan Clark, music producer Lynn Orman, Eleni Prilliman at WLUW, Rob Galetta at CanTV, and of course, Katie Hogan, Tom Clark, and Michael James. We'd also like to thank our guests this week, Glenn Reedus and Thornetta Davis. Every Saturday at 9 a.m., you can hear our radio broadcast on 88.7 WLUW, and you can now also find Heartland at Home broadcasting on CAN TV. We're now going to leave you with Thornetta Davis and her bluesy, I Believe. Do good in the world. The world needs all the good we do. All power to the people.
Well, my baby up and left me, did me a favor when he did. See, he been lying all along about another woman and 2 kids. I guess he wasn't mine anyway, so I'm not sad to see him go. 'Cause he was no good anyhow, and he spent up all my dough. And I believe everything gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. I believe everything gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. I believe. Didn't mind crying in the evening, joy soon come in the morning light. Brother Charlie walking down the street one day. He said, sister, can you help me? I need some food right away. Well, I reached in my pocket and gave him what I had. He said, God bless you, sister. Now I don't feel so bad. He said, I believe everything gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. I believe everything gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. I believe. I didn't mind crying in the evening, joy soon come in the morning light. When I turn on the TV, bad news is all it say. Seems like war and destruction is happening every day.